Afternoon, Boulevard. Welcome to our terrific Tuesday Bible studies as we continue to walk through the book of Philippians. We hope that you have enjoyed this study this summer. I'm so glad that you're joining us on this terrific Tuesday. There's some great things happening around Boulevard this week that we want you to be aware of. Of course, there's in our nation, there's Independence Day celebration coming up Saturday, July 4th. Hopefully you'll be able to gather with your family and friends and have some good times eating out, or at least grilling out or eating some food together and maybe popping some firecrackers or something like that. I think it's already started in our neighborhood already. Currently we have our daughter Jamie's dog Fezzik, who's living with us. And yes, for Princess Bride fans, he is named after the giant Fezzik, and he looks big enough to be a part of the Brute Squad. All right, but he isn't very appreciative of fireworks at all, and so he's been going a little crazy. I'm thinking about giving him some Prozac or something to calm him down during this time. So he's enjoying the fireworks by barking it every time that somebody pops off a firework. And on Sunday, I want to remind you that you're invited to join us either on seat or online as we start our new series called Struggles. And actually, I believe it's going to be one of the most important and impactful series that we will do this year. If you struggle with an endless loop of imaginary conversations with others, then, or if you struggle with being a prisoner to your thoughts, those voices telling us to worry, that you're not good enough, that you can never change, please reserve the time to listen to this series, whether you're coming on seat or online. I believe we will shine a light on some of the strongholds that hold us down and how we can demolish those strongholds. So I hope to see you coming up this Sunday. Now, Brady and Randy started us on this journey in Philippians chapter 4. And as we coming in on the background, you can see Randy.
He's the latecomer.
My compatriot today, my normal wingman, Jim Landis, took off with his kids. Ike and Zeke had to go see their grandparents up in Topeka, Kansas. So you might pray for them. You know, Topeka's kind of the wasteland of the world up there. It may be the capital of Kansas, but Dorothy didn't know where it was. So think about them as they're up celebrating the 4th of July. But Brandy and Brady.
It's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's doing better. Brandy's going to be singing a song here before long. Brady and Randy start us on this journey in Philippians 4. And if you've been with us since the start of our study, you know that what we've said is kind of the key theme of the book. And if you're online, if you know what that key theme is, why don't you just type it in that as you remember it. There's another word or concept that's used 15 times throughout the book of Philippians, and that's the idea of our mind, our attitude, our thinking, our mindset. So this word, joy, which is used 19 times, and think, or mind, put those together as that joy comes by our attitude or how we think about things. And so joy springs out of what we think. We know from Proverbs, as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. You can recognize that I memorized that from the King James Version back in my early days. But your attitude or your mind, your thinking is huge in retaining and experiencing joy in your life, in the best of times and in the worst of times. It's a theme that Paul just kind of keeps circling around and weaving through the fabric of this letter constantly. Our thinking, our understanding of our identity in Christ affects how well we're able to live constantly in joy. And early on in this study, from chapter 1 on, we've learned different things that this joy manifests itself and keeps on going by certain mindsets, and we can have joy despite Circumstances. Paul was in prison, not going well for him circumstance-wise, but he continually talks about joy. He talks about have joy despite difficult people. Not that anyone around here would have any problem with difficult people in their lives. And he talks about joy that we have in serving that helps us be able to minister to those who are difficult and still remain in our joy. Joy that comes out of sharing with others. Joy despite worrisome issues. And so we see over and over again that the mind or our attitude is such an essential part of joy. It has so much to do with that elusive quality also that we call maturity. And the last section here in Philippians chapter 4 has some very clear descriptions of what maturity looks like. I am discovering, and probably many of you are also, that as we get older, we think that maturity is automatic. It's not. Getting older is automatic, but maturity is not. At least in my case, I'm not necessarily growing more mature. And it's so important that we grow up as we grow older, and that will not happen until we get control of our attitude, our mind, our thinking process. So what does it mean to be mature? I wished I knew. Becoming mature is kind of the process of consistently moving forward towards emotional and spiritual adulthood. We adopt a lifestyle where we are fully responsible for our own decisions, our motives, our actions, our consequences. Maturity is able to accept correction when we need it, and we never arrive. We are always in the process of moving towards that objective. And when maturity is taking place, balance replaces extremes. A seasoned confidence replaces uneasy feelings and feelings of insecurity. Good choices replace wrong choices. And I think we're getting a pretty good glimpse of a man who exhibited continual growth towards maturity in the person of Paul, who is the writer, of course, of Philippians. So I find at least 4 characteristics. We're not going to make it through all of them this morning. I planned for this to be the last week. That was before I sat down and started putting together this Bible study. So we're going to get through a couple of the characteristics of maturity this morning, all right? So first of all, I see and we're looking at chapter 4, verse 10. So if you have your Bibles, look at that. I see that maturity is affirming to others. Look at chapter 4, verse 10. He says this, I rejoice, there's our word again, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You are indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Now, honestly, as you read that, they can kind of sound a little bit ominous if you don't understand what was behind them, those words. Paul is talking about some financial support that he mentions earlier in the book that the people from Philippi sent him. He says, when he says, you were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity, he means that they wanted to send him support earlier, but either they didn't know where he was, and that's a big possibility. I mean, couldn't pick up a cell phone in the first century and call Paul and say, hey, Paul, where are you today? And they had no way to get to him. Even if they'd sent a letter, it might be months before it arrived to wherever he was last. And so even though they didn't know where he was, they had gathered support to send to him. And so they were concerned about him. Normally it's the other way around. We have opportunity to send our support, but we lack quite often concern. The whole of Philippians in some ways is a thank you letter. The implication that Paul has here is thoughtful. Even when I did not hear from you, I knew you were concerned for me. Paul thought the best of them, not the worst. I have this deal going on at times in my mind. This is one of the battles I face in my mind. are struggles that I face in my own mind. Sometimes when I feel like I'm not getting attention, I can ascribe some of the worst motives to people that I believe ought to be paying attention to me. Not that I need to be the center of attention. I just think I need to be. But Paul was not that way. Paul is a mark of maturity. Uh, even though when he did not hear from his friends, he did not doubt their concern. We appreciate what people do, right? But we affirm who they are. And when someone completes a task, we say, hey, thank you. And we're expressing our appreciation for that. But when we acknowledge or express our gratitude for what others are in character or motive or in heart, we're affirming them personally. And I believe Paul is telling us that a big mark of maturity is the ability to affirm as well as appreciate. Guys, so often we think the worst of people when we don't even know what the circumstances are. And sometimes they are thinking about us and concerned about us, but lack the opportunity to express that concern within their lives. So Paul says, maintain your joy, understand that when you're affirming to others, that will come back to you. The second thing that I noticed, and this is one of the biggies in this passage of scripture, is maturity is learning to be content. Whew, that's a strong statement. Philippians 4, verses 11 and 12 says this, not that I'm speaking of being in need. He's talking about this thankfulness of receiving the offering. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I know what it's like, he says. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to be have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I believe that most followers of Jesus want contentment. I know I do, but it's a learned trait. It sure doesn't come naturally. We are not by nature content people. And I think we can contract this disease of discontentment pretty early in life. And so it has to be a learned trait to be able to understand it. Now, let me just say something that contentment is not. Contentment isn't just laying back and whatever comes may come type of situation. Paul, you read in chapter 3, I press on, toward the upward goal, the call of Christ Jesus, my Lord, towards the mission. Paul was a type A personality. I mean, he was on the go. So it wasn't just whatever happens will happen type of situation with Paul. I mean, most personality profiles that you hear talked about, if they're Christian, one of the things they always have Paul listed as a type A, high D guy who's a choleric, go-getter type of guy. But in the midst of that, he was able to balance that with the idea of contentment. Robert Hastings, in an article, pictures us on a train ride, and he says, so imagine yourself going on a long journey on a train. If you've never taken a train anywhere, it's a great experience. I urge you to try it. You can go to Oklahoma City and go all the way down to Dallas, Fort Worth and go shopping, and oops, that might destroy your contentment, but and come back. It's a great ride. But he says, you imagine yourself going on this long journey on a train. And outside the windows, there are fields of corn, maybe mountains coming up, hillsides, city skylines, but you don't really notice those things on your train because you're absolutely focused on getting to the station ahead of you, your destination. And in your mind, you've decided that the station is the place where you will find fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness. So you walk up and down the aisles of the train, looking at your watch, finding out how longer will we get to the station, and wishing the train to go faster, 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 because if you could just get to that station, everything would be good. And here's what Hastings says. He says, the name of the train is more. and the station is contentment. And we think when we arrive at that station, uh, we will be content. My 16-year-old granddaughter, she just knew that when she was able to get her driver's license, everything in the world would be great. And then she finds she has to take her little sister everywhere she goes. you know, or when I get my degree, when I have enough money in the bank, I'll buy that Jaguar. When I lose weight, when I find Mr. or Miss Right, when we can retire comfortably, when I get to the station. That's when I can find happiness. And the train is called more, and it's always headed to a station called contentment. Now, is that the secret that Paul's talking about? The way to find contentment is just to get more. Because this is the message that's communicated to us by our culture constantly. We're bombarded by messages that remind us, you don't have, you don't have, you don't have. When I struggle with contentment, every time I get on an airplane, I struggle with contentment. You get on, and for years, my dad worked for American Airlines, and you would board the plane last, and you'd walk through first class, where they've got massive amounts of leg room and armrests the size of small beds. And I walk past that, and I get envious, because if you're flying passes, you generally get stuck back by the bathroom door, where everybody crawls over you and they're way back to the bathroom, and it doesn't always have a great smell there. In first class, they get warm washcloths to wash up their hands, scented with lemon after their meals. Back in the cattle car, you do get food occasionally. It's just, there's this thing where my contentment goes back. So you make your way back to the seat. It's cramped there. I don't know what you do, but here's what I always do. I pull down the armrest and I claim that armrest. That is my armrest. And the guy in the middle seat is not going to be able to get that armrest from me. And so I'll only work one-handed in that so that I can make sure that that armrest is my property and it's my space and I get it, because I'm not content otherwise. So I sit down, and oftentimes I reach in the back of the little pocket there in the back of the chair in front of me, and I pull out a magazine. You know what that magazine is? Sky Mall magazine. And I do some recreational reading. You know what Sky Mall magazine is designed for? It's designed to make you discontent. Anybody know what this magazine is? It's full of inventions that you never knew existed before. And now as I comb through the pages, I can't live without them, I just go through it. I need this, and a robot. I really need that, right? About the same way with going on Amazon. I got, for my Father's Day present from my girls, two of them sent me Amazon gift certificates. Good stuff. So I go online. It's kind of like grazing. You just look and you look, what do you think I'm getting? And I've got this long list of books that I always want to buy, and the books add up more than my gift certificate does. Or I start looking at electronic gadgets that I think I have to have, and it's like, I need this. I need this. I need this. Bless me, Lord, I pray. Give it to me, So is more the secret to contentment? To be honest, if we really pushed on what it would take to make us content, we would think it is more. We would describe that our life needs more of something. We would describe a change in circumstance. And if we got that change in circumstance, different job, different spouse, different child, whatever it might be, we would say, if that situation or circumstance changed, I would be content. But did you hear what Paul said? In verse 12, he says, I've learned the secret of being content in every and any situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty. That means not being able to ride in first class. It means being able to, that would be the plenty aspect. Or whether it's in want, in any and every situation. Now here's the thing. Contentment's it's an intrinsic thing. It comes within, and it's not based upon externals. So Contentment doesn't come and go based upon the size of your bank account, mechanical reliability of our car, thank God for that, the strength of the stock market, whoo, hasn't that been an unjoyful ride lately, or the housing market. It's not based on the prognosis of the doctor, or the shape of your body, or the misshape of your body. Those things are on the outside, and they do not bring lasting contentment. Paul speaks to someone who's been on both sides of the tracks. He knows what it's like to have a lot. From what we can tell, he grew up in a pretty well-to-do family. He was able to study at the feet of Gamaliel in the school of Gamaliel, one of the great rabbis in the rabbinic system. That took money, because you didn't just go up and say, hey, do you have a scholarship there? You paid the rabbi to sit at his feet. And so he must have had a well-to-do family. He went to the right school, and yet he's under house arrest as he writes this letter. And so he knows what it's like to have itty-bitty, little. There have been really tough times for Paul. I mean, if you don't call being stoned with rocks, and being left for dead 3 different times, that's not a contentment type of situation. And he just wants us to be clear on the fact. He wants you to know, and myself to know, you may have a lot, you may have little. That's really not what contentment's about. Because if you have little now and you're not content, whenever you have lots later, if that's ever comes about, you won't be content then either. There's a study that looked at people at different income brackets. This is about 5 years ago. And they found that people who made $30,000 a year said, I would just be content if I made $50,000 a year. And they surveyed people who were in the $50,000 to $60,000 income bracket, and they said, I could really be content if I made $100,000 a year. And those in the $100,000 a year income bracket said, I would be content if I made $200,000 a year. Do you get the sequence that's happening? And this happened all through this survey. We always think if we have more, then we're going to be content. And Proverbs says, that's not happening. He says human desires are like the world of the dead. There's always room for more. So if you're looking for material blessings to satisfy the need within you, you're never going to be content. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot or whether you have a little. Now there's a bunch more that Paul has to say about the idea of maturity, but we're coming to the end of our time already. So you'll get to be with us again on Terrific Tuesday next week in July, the first Tuesday in July. And so we'll pick up at that time. So just a couple of things I want to remind you of. I appreciate you being a part of our Bible study here each Tuesday. Steve will be on this Thursday, so keep checking on Boulevard's Facebook page on the time. And coming up in August, there's going to be a great opportunity for us to minister to our community in our back-to-school clothing extravaganza. And we have been collecting mounds, I'm talking mounds of clothing to be able to distribute this year. And because of the COVID-19, we've not had a chance to really separate and sort and get it ready for the time that we're going to distribute it, which is going to be sometime near the end of August. I'm not sure the date right now, but what we need right now is some volunteers who will be willing to come in. And because we're social distancing, we'd ask that you go online to our app, on the Boulevard app, and if you'll find the link that says, I think it says sorting clothes. And so I know that's exciting to think about. That's the last thing I want to do on Saturday morning after I'm doing my laundry, is sort them. But anyway, if you want to sort clothes and be a servant, click on it and let us know when you can volunteer. And because we're practicing social distancing, you can pick a time, and there'll only be so many there during that time. And please help us by signing up to do it. Hey, have a great week with some fireworks. And our dog Fezzik will be barking at you every time you shoot one off. And have a great week practicing contentment. Have a terrific Tuesday. Bye.
Woo.